Tonight, we begin a month-long series on what many Chattanoogans say will be an extremely important addition to our city skyline, the Tennessee Aquarium.
Now, during the next few weeks, we're going to focus on the impact the aquarium will have on the Tennessee Valley. We'll also take you to other aquariums around the country and see what they've meant to their communities.
But what better place to start our look inside the Tennessee Aquarium than in the beginning? Stephen Ruf has been covering the story for about 6 years and joins us from the aquarium worksite. Stephen, you're standing in front of a building that a lot of folks said would never, ever be put up.
Well, Ted, there were doubters that Chattanooga would ever get this far. But just one look at this mass of concrete, glass, and steel, it's obvious the aquarium is a reality. Now, city planners like to point out that this is just the beginning, the start of what they call a renaissance on the river that will mean an infusion of new businesses, offices, and other shops down here on the riverfront. But what we'd like to show you tonight is how this idea for an aquarium all got started. The people, the citizens groups, and the dream to bring the city back to the river.
This is the sound of Chattanooga's Renaissance on the river. Sparks have been flying here at the Tennessee Aquarium for the last year and a half. When it's all finished, about a year from now, developers say it will make the city's riverfront its front porch. It used to be that way. Before there was a Chattanooga, this was called Ross's Landing. It was a trading post and later a commercial port where riverboats took on goods bound for the Mississippi. Back in the late 70s, a group of students from UT's School of Architecture were looking for ways to bring the city back to its roots, back to the river. They put together an exhibit called Images of the City, and among their recommendations, anchor Chattanooga's riverfront development with an aquarium.
So it was a natural, and it caused a lot of interest at that time, but it was very subliminal. I mean, people didn't walk out of that exhibit, we got to build an aquarium. It just kind of planted a seed.
A few years later, a preservation group commissioned a study looking for ways to save the historic Walnut Street Bridge. Consultants for Landmark Chattanooga suggested the best way was to put something attractive at the end of it, and they too recommended an aquarium. About the same time, the Moccasin Bend Task Force was meeting with the public, trying to come up with a master plan to develop the whole 20-mile stretch of riverfront from Chickamauga Dam to the Tennessee River Gorge. In April of '85, the task force unveiled its study before 1,000 people at the Trade Center. There were descriptions of the proposed river park along Amnicola Highway, and they proposed an even bigger aquarium at Ross's Landing.
That must have been the turning point that the community returned to the river spiritually. I mean, it was an enormous crowd. It was, you could just feel it in the air.
We could see that the major aquariums not only broke even, but also made money in most cases. So it looked like a good thing for us to recommend as part of what would happen at Ross's Landing.
A year earlier, community leaders, with the endorsement of city and county governments, had formed Chattanooga Venture. The grassroots citizen group met often to brainstorm ideas for a better city, and they too got hooked onto the idea of an aquarium. Representatives went to Nashville to ask Governor Lamar Alexander for funding.
It's quite true that the governor at that point said, if you're going to build one, don't just build, I'm not sure he used this language, but don't just build the anchor for a downtown development project, build a world-class aquarium. And that's what we decided to do.
If you want a world-class aquarium, you need a world-class architect. One of the first names to surface was Peter Chermayoff, designer of the National Aquarium in Baltimore. After visiting the Ross's Landing site, Chermayoff liked what he saw.
If you are geographically between Baltimore and Florida, and there's nothing else in between, that means that Chattanooga enters people's minds as a place to stop for another reason than they might have already had.
A few months later, Chermayoff was hired. And later that year, Chattanoogans got a chance to see some of his work firsthand when a delegation visited the National Aquarium. Riverfront planners were encouraged by the retail and office development nearby. Chattanooga's River City Corporation was making similar plans here to build a public plaza surrounded by shops and offices. In February of 1988, Chermayoff unveiled his final drawings for the aquarium at a huge gathering at the Chattanooga Choo Choo. Most people were enthusiastic, but a small minority didn't feel the aquarium would solve the city's real problems.
I feel it's an unwarranted expense. I feel that the city of Chattanooga has its priorities a little mixed up. When I go down to Alton Park and I go down to City High School and Howard and I see people getting beat up and I see people on the street without jobs, you know, I say this is not anything that's going to fix these problems.
By now, no amount of public criticism could stop the aquarium, which already had attracted millions of dollars in corporate and private contributions. Just 7 years from the aquarium's conception, officials broke ground. And as a symbol of Chattanooga's Renaissance on the river, bulldozers demolished the old Nolan building.